Hey loves, how are you? Day 17 of the Higher Self series, and you guys have brought in some amazing questions. And I know I said I was going to address the telepathic communication between twin flames, divine counterparts, and we're going to go into that tomorrow. But today I wanted to address the question around how do you discern what is your higher self speaking to you? And the reason I'm doing this first is because you having your own internal compass and understanding and the connection with your own communication with your highest self is a key piece to understanding and working with the telepathic communication within your connection. Okay. But I'll also say these communications with your higher self and your divine counterpart are happening at the energetic levels, even if you're not aware of that in the physical world. So this is something that is just happening very naturally at a soul level. But I'm gonna do my best to bring in some tips and maybe like awarenesses that might help you see where you perhaps have already been doing these things and maybe just didn't realize that's what it was. Okay. Because I kind of sense that that might be the case for some of you. So, as we open up into this conversation around how do you discern what is your higher self, I'm going to share a little bit about my journey with it when I was getting started and how I started to discern that in the physical world. And then I realized down the road that a lot of the messages I was receiving or a knowing I was receiving was actually um, was my higher self communicating with me all along. I just didn't know what that was. Okay. And what I would do was if I had a situation coming up or something that I needed an answer to, but let's say it was giving me anxiety or frustration or uncertainty, what I would do back when I was really learning how to listen was that I would just go and lay down in like a meditative kind of state. I didn't try to be super quiet or perfect. I would just give myself the space and the grace to let things start to show me what it wanted to show me. Okay. So when you guys always hear me talk about space and grace, this is a big reason why. Because if we want to learn about something and we want to learn how to build the muscle or the understanding of these energies, then we just have to give ourselves time in the space and the grace to start to explore these energies or these pockets that we haven't been within. So, some of the ways that I would know that I received my higher self communication, so to speak, would be that when my body would start to calm down. My anxiety would start to subside and I wouldn't feel that pressure. I would start to feel or sense solutions to the questions I was asking, or at the very least, I would know one step to take. Okay. It was starting to give me a higher perspective of the whole situation. And I was kind of learning how to dance with what my typical human self had known my whole life and actually learning how to hold space for my higher self to start to communicate with me. Okay, so it wasn't something that just happened boom one day. It was like this practice and this intention that I wanted to facilitate and strengthen my connection with my higher self, with my higher power, with my highest potential. And so it's not like a one and done process. A lot of it is your intention. And yes, it's all you, but if any of you work with guides or spirit teams or pray to higher energies or source or God, in essence, your higher self is an aspect of that team. Okay. So you could even start to potentially, if it resonates with you, understand that your spirit guides and your teams are actually part of your aspects. They're connected to you in deeper ways. I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because I do not want to create any confusion, but this is an important part of understanding that as we move into the higher dimensions, things are not just this or that, black or white, like we've learned to navigate in the our third dimension on our planet. Okay. We see things as we grew up very linearly this way or that way. But in truth, there's actually a lot in between. Just like we have black and white, but they're truly varying shades of gray when you start to mix them together. And so that opens up a whole bunch of potentials that it's not just one way or another, although one way or another is also true. What we're learning how to do is navigate the gray areas, become comfortable within those, learning to neutralize the extremes in the sense that we're not trying to get rid of the extremes. We're actually learning how to embrace and navigate the extremes. Okay. So it's the same thing when you're applying it to working with your emotions, right? And you're wanting to navigate your emotions and learn how to work with them. Say, like, you were taught anger is something to suppress or to not show, or it's not good to have anger. But in truth, anger in and of itself is a very important and positive emotion if we know how to use it, if we know how to understand what it's communicating with us, and we can extract the lessons and the message it's showing us versus just reacting or suppressing it. Okay. So anger is there to tell us something doesn't feel right. Okay. So when we can sit with that emotion and say, okay, anger is present, what is really going on here and what do I need to do to resolve this? Okay. The anger in and of itself is not bad or wrong. It's actually an important part of being here. Okay. But at the same time, it doesn't mean we go out and we, start acting out or projecting it onto people. We understand what it's trying to communicate with us. And this is how we learn to master the emotions. It's not about shutting them down or ignoring them or pretending they don't exist. It's about learning how to work with them. This is the same exact thing with your higher power, your highest self. And you can liken it to almost this idea of this part of your energy and essence that has like an eagle eye perspective. So imagine you're like a wolf on the ground, okay, like a pack animal, and you don't have the vantage point of the eagle up in the tree. Okay, you're a wolf. It is what it is. But if the eagle and the wolf start to work together, actually, I'm going to say this, the crows and the wolves actually literally work together in this exact way. So I'm going to talk about the crows because I know this is true. All right. But the crows have the ability to be down on the streets, but also up in the trees. Okay. So in the wild, the wolves are good hunters, right? And the crows are good lookout. They can scout. So how they work together in the wild is the crows fly ahead, i.e., your higher self has that vantage point of everything that's occurring, right? They can see way more from that higher perspective. They go scout out where the prey is. They find it. They start making their cawing sound to let the wolves know where the prey is. Then the wolves go catch the prey, eat their fill, and when they're done, the crows partake in their share. Okay, this is how they work together. This is, in a sense, I know, like a prey predator type of situation, but it's in essence the same exact thing that we have access to when we choose to call in our higher self. Okay, now many people might think wolves and crows would not work together. This blew me away because I actually witnessed this, not with wolves, but I witnessed this with my cats and crows in my yard that I had years ago. Okay, I had this pack of cats, five that came to me. They were all rescues or strays, and one was even feral. And he loved to go out and hunt in the yard. And the crows in the yard were constantly screaming. And I was like, what is going on? And I went out there, and literally one day, where they just would not stop yelling, my cats were over there hunting bulls. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, this just literally showed me how they work together. And So it's legit, it's real. But in a sense, that is the eagle or the crow, that bird energy of flight is like our higher self that has that view, that higher view. It doesn't have to be on the ground scrounging, right? It can look at it from the higher vantage point and then share the message with you, but you have to be open to listening. And that is really where the practice of just being with yourself, being quiet, setting the intention to receive answers to your questions, and then giving it space. Sometimes, even as much as I've worked with this, sometimes I sit down and I ask a question and I kind of get an answer or a download right away. And other times I know that I have to give it space. Like maybe I'll know in the morning after I process and sleep, or it might take a couple days or a few weeks. But what one of you guys also asked, what is a download? And I'm going to kind of bring it in there because I spoke about it. Because downloads do come from our higher power. And what's happening is you might get called or you might get tired and you go lay down or you go into a meditative state as you're asking your higher self for guidance. Okay. It might happen in that moment, but it might happen like a few days from now where all of a sudden you're just like, man, I feel like I could take a nap, and you just go lay down for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then you're like, oh man, you kind of go into almost like a meditative, one of my friends calls it like a coma nap, where you're like, you kind of know you're awake and you're processing things, but you're also like asleep, and then you come out of it and you feel much better and more integrated. That is, in essence, receiving a download of information. Now, you might not know what that information is right at that time, but you received the answer energetically to what you asked. And probably over the next hours and days and weeks, you will unpack and get more clarity around that. Okay, so that's one way of getting a download direct from your higher self. And also, you may have a conversation. Like I know some of you have watched my videos and said that you could feel yourself literally receiving the downloads from the messages. So sometimes you're just having a conversation, and say someone shares a perspective that you've not had about a subject, but you feel resonance with it and it kind of opens up this pocket within you of potential. That's also activating like a download and activating the keys and codes inside of you. I did a video around that about a month ago. I can drop that in the comments as well. But in essence, it opened that up in you, and now you're going to receive your own downloads or potentials connected with whatever that person shared. Okay, so it'll kind of open up that potential and possibility of that new higher perspective, right? Like we were talking about, like the eagle eye or the crow perspective. So it can come in a lot of different forms. It can come from watching a show or a movie or overhearing a conversation. So when something opens up within you, that's in essence, you're receiving a new download and a new potential that wasn't there or that you weren't aware of maybe just minutes before. Okay. So there's different ways that we can get downloads, and this directly connects with that higher power, higher self energy. Sometimes all you're needing to do in that moment is to let yourself receive the energetics. And over time, your higher self and your soul will help you understand it or unpack it. And how you'll know this sometimes is that maybe you've been working on an idea or a concept, or you've been healing a certain part of yourself, and you've been going along, and then all of a sudden, one day you get this light bulb moment where you realize that you understand it in a whole new, deeper way. Okay, that's where you've integrated the download. That's where you've really processed and started to embody what your higher self has been teaching and sharing with you. Okay, so those are some of the ways. And I would almost bet money on it that many of you, if not all of you, have had these types of experiences already. Okay, so you've already been receiving your higher self information. Maybe you just weren't aware that that's what it was. Because at first, even for me, when I was learning about higher self, it felt like this entity and energy that was very far away from me. Like this, like I said, like a Wonder Woman aspect of me that I kind of looked up to, right? And over time, as I kept working with it and I kept unraveling the old distortion and clearing out the programming and asking to align with my truth and my potential, I started to feel more of the presence of that knowing with me on a more regular basis. And I'm not saying like I'm fully embodied in my higher self in a sense, but yes, I am a lot more than I ever was before, if that's helpful. It feels like I have a very symbiotic and comfortable relationship. The more I worked that muscle, the more I trust it, the more I trust that higher guidance, the more it shows up for me. And what I mean by that is if you've ever gotten a message or a knowing that you needed to do something or say something or go somewhere, and it didn't make any sense in any way, shape, or form, especially logically, but you just knew that you needed to do it and you found that you trusted it and then it played out and worked out for you, that was your higher self guidance. And the more that you trust that, the better. Okay. I even had times in the past where, okay, I have an example. I was asked to do a presentation for a company like years ago. And I wanted to do it, but my guidance, my intuition kept saying, you're not going to be able to do it that day. And I didn't know what it was about, so I sat with it and I felt kind of hesitation around it. I wasn't clear. I felt a little cloudy around, is that true? And when I asked my friend if she would potentially fill in for me, she was also hesitant around the situation. I sat with it for a few more days and then I got very clear, higher guidance like, you're not going to be available that day. You're not going to be able to show up that day. Nothing's on your calendar right now, but there is stuff coming. And so, you know, you're not going to be able to do it, period. And so I was like, wow, this is crazy. But I owned it. I agreed to it. I called my friend. I told her I received that clear of a guidance. And her response to me was, I trust you. I trust what you're getting. I'll do it for you. And lo and behold, as it came up, I ended up having to be in another appointment that was only available that day around that time. And it was something that was time sensitive. So it had to be done at that time. And I was like, wow, okay, now I'm going to always trust that. And that situation right there helped me build my confidence because when I was wishy washy, my friend was wishy washy. When I was clear and I was confident in owning the guidance I was given, she was right on board and felt confident and comfortable with it as well. Okay. So, but it's that process of building that trust. And then once I had situations like that happen multiple times, it started to become easy. Like I didn't even question most of the time when I was getting that clear, direct guidance, like, you're not going to be able to do that. And I would just say, like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do that. I wouldn't even question why, but ask me next time and we'll see where things are at then. So it wasn't that I was shut down. It was actually that I would just literally take the time to check in to make sure it was where I was meant to be. And this is kind of that energy of waiting or asking for what's in alignment with you versus trying to force things to be a certain way. Okay. And this is also a very powerful way of allowing yourself to develop self trust, self validation. And the more you're able to discern your own truth and your own energy, the easier and easier it's going to become to be able to discern other people's voices, okay? Which will make it a little bit easier and more comfortable for you to open up in a telepathic form of communication. Now, based on the comments that I've seen from you guys, some of you are aware of your counterpart's energy and some of you are not. Some of you are getting dream um, communication and some are not. Okay, everybody is different. Okay, so we'll go into more of that, but working with your own connection to your own higher power and your own inner voice and your own inner truth is a very big important piece to being able to develop your telepathic abilities and not get overwhelmed or overloaded by that, because that's important. We have to still have some form of boundaries and understanding in our system so that we don't get bombarded by all sorts of telepathic communication. So, learning to discern your higher self voice is very exceedingly helpful in this process. Okay. I felt like there was something else I did want to share with you guys around this. Um, I'm not sure where it just went. I felt like it was. All right, give me one moment. Oh, okay. So also one of the things that I've found as my process has expanded, right? I told you how I would sit and really develop that trust with that voice. On the other side of it, I have found that as I'm unraveling and dissolving out of the ancestral trauma or my past life trauma or the collective trauma types of patterns, the more and more space I have in my system to be able to invite my higher self, true core soul essence into my body. Okay. And this is the type of work that I do in my group sessions and in my one on one sessions. My one of my core intentions with my work is to support you in embodying all of who you are in whatever way that is. And I have found for a majority of us, if not all of us, having more access to our soul energy in our human physical form can be very helpful for more of our energy to be grounded and embodied on the earth. This is exactly why I actually did this series, because in a sense, I'm saying that your higher self has that higher, you know, pro or eagle eye perspective. But imagine being able to have that perspective and have it come in, obviously, to your awareness and trust it. That's awesome. But imagine that next level of actually inviting that part of you to be able to come into your physical form and integrate with what you've known. This is, in essence, where we can bring those 5D ways of being into physicality, because we're talking about moving. I know many of you have heard moving from 3D to 5D. Okay. So we're still going to be in the physical 3D world, right? We're still going to have our bodies, but we're going to be embodying our 5D energies and essences in your higher self is a big part of that energy. Okay. This is my understanding. This is what I have been doing for years. I received this guidance about 5D and my higher self starting back in 2009. I realize now it was my higher self preparing me. At the time, I was actually working with another group of women who were talking about us moving to 4D, and my higher self interjected and was like, no, you're going to 5D. And I didn't even know what that was at the time. And I started researching it and looking it up. And I kind of started to just go my own way with that because it resonated with me and this idea of the unconditional love and the self mastery. So there you have it. Learning about 5D was actually one of the first downloads I ever got from my higher self, but I didn't even realize that till years later. Okay. So, yes. And also, somebody asked about the different dimensions. We're working and we're in the process of embodying our 5D frequencies into physicality. It's why we're going through the purification and detox processes physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Okay. And those processes are different for each and every person. So it's really important to also develop that inner trust with yourself and your body so that you know what to provide it. Okay. I do not believe that there is a one process fits all in this scenario, because we are all built differently on a cellular level. We have different ethnic backgrounds. We live in different regions. Our bodies have different blood types and different things going on. So the needs of your body as an individual is going to be very unique and different. And I think it's important that you really learn how to develop and discern trust with listening to your body is also another part of working with your higher self energy. Okay. And that doesn't mean not to get support and help, but also to understand that when it comes down to it, it's really about you learning to trust and discern and build that relationship for yourself as much as possible. So that even when you're working with others and they're giving you advice or encouragement or suggestions, you can still tap in to ask if it feels right for you. Okay. That feels important um, because each body is so incredibly unique. And it's really important for us to discern our own truth on every level. I think that is one of the most important things for us to do. And it's why I feel like trusting ourselves and trusting our higher self is important because bringing in the higher self energy kind of helps bridge where we felt powerless in the past, maybe where we gave our power away to high other authority figures, like teachers or doctors or adults, and not saying that they don't have any wisdom, but at the same time, we weren't really taught to develop our own inner trust. We were taught to do what we were told, which wasn't always necessarily what was truly the best for us. And so we're re-establishing that process and the energy of building that trust with ourselves, which I'm going to reiterate it again. This is going to be key for your evolution and ascension energies as we move into these 5D and higher um, dimensions. And what I mean by that, yes, we're embodying 5D into physicality, the frequencies, but yes, we're still working and operating in the other higher dimensions as well. Okay. That could be another pocket that we go into sometime if you would like. But yes, okay. So building trust with yourself in any ways that you can is going to give you a framework and a foundation to also be able to trust yourself and your connection and the communication you are receiving from your divine counterpart. Because that energy is in essence always communicating with you. And maybe when we get into the telepathic connection tomorrow, maybe you'll have a new perspective and realize you have been receiving more of these communications than you've realized. Either way, I hope that this was helpful. I'm so grateful for your interaction and your connection and your comments and your questions. And I'm grateful that you're here with me and that you've been guided in listening to yourself to take the time to build these energies for yourself, in yourself, um, embodying your inner union, your inner knowing, and your inner trust. I appreciate you. I love you. And I hope that this video was helpful. And I'll see you tomorrow for day 18 of the Higher Self series. And if you want to catch up on that, I'm going to drop the playlist in the pinned comment, and I'll also put my schedule and the next group session down in the pinned comment as well for any of you that might be interested. All right, loves, love you. Bye.